What's up, y'all? We are back for episode 13 of our full site build. In today's video, we're going to build out this surface area section. Just as a heads up, guys, I went through this yesterday and actually built this out, and it ended up hitting some technical difficulties, and I'm going to redo it for you guys today. So hopefully this one goes a little bit smoother than yesterday and everything works as it should. So a few things to note before we get started here is Kansas and Missouri are both going to be taxonomies of my service areas. And then each of these cities will be service areas as well that will get tagged with that. What I went ahead and did is in MetaBox, under taxonomies, I created what is called state. You can see my slug is just state, and I set it to only be on my service area. Then under my service areas, you can see my state taxonomy is Kansas and Missouri. One thing I also did is added in some custom fields. So if I go to MetaBox and custom fields, and I go to my state tax fields, under here you'll see I have a lead, an icon, and a theme. So if we go back to the Figma here, you will see we have two different colors that we're using here. So that's how I'm going to dictate my theme. And then you'll see we have icons here that I want to be able to designate as well, and then this lead text as well. So from within my taxonomy of each of those, if I go in here under service areas and states, if I click on Kansas, for example, you can see we have the name, the slug, the lead, the icon, and which theme I'm going to use on that. So I pre-did all that so you guys don't have to watch me just enter data. Same with on all of the service areas. If I quick edit, you can see I've set all of them to have that taxonomy that they belong to. So let's go ahead and dive in to the builder. I'm just going to launch Etch. And once this opens, the very first thing I'm going to do is add in a section. I think I'm just going to call this essay section for service area. I'm going to call this my inner. Inside my inner, we're going to have a content wrapper for this. So let's add a flex div. I'm going to call this my content wrapper. And then I'm also going to have a paragraph tag in here, and we'll just call this, if we look at it, it's kind of like a CTA text. So I'm just going to add CTA in front of it. Also inside of here, I'm going to add in our section intro. I want to bring that up above my inner, and we need to set everything for this. So I'm just going to copy our service area, goes in the SEO heading. Our proudly serving goes in the marketing headline, and we will have to put a span around that so that it turns into that blue color that we're using for our secondary theme, which you can see is already set. And then we just need to also pull in our lead here as well. I don't have a slot here, and we're not using the pill version, so that's all set up there. I think next thing that we're going to do is inside of our content wrapper, we're going to have to add in a few things here before we actually build out these cards here. So you'll see we have 2 cards plus a map in the middle. We're going to end up setting this up using grid, and we're just going to force the map in the middle. We're going to have to do this a little bit more of an advanced way, because both of these items are also going to be in a list where the map will not be. So stick around and you'll figure out how we go about doing that. But in the meantime, what I'm going to end up doing is putting in my list and list item, and then we're going to put in my map wrapper as well inside of our content wrapper. So I'm going to add a flex div. Inside of my flex div, I'm going to add a regular div. I'm going to call this our area list. I'm going to call this list item. And then also in here, I'm going to add another flex div. And in here, I'm going to call this my map wrapper. And the first thing I'm going to do on our map wrapper is I'm actually going to change this to a figure tag. So if I double click inside the div here, or I click on the tag down here, we can change that to a figure. Next, I'm going to come up to another tab here I have open. And in order to get our map here, so from our Google Business profile, if you're on the map view, I can click share and get the embed map code. And I'm just going to copy this. If I come back over here, inside of my map wrapper, if you see, I just put my cursor here in the HTML. I'm just going to click, or I'm going to paste in here my map. So you can see it embeds that. The one thing I'm going to change right away is going to be the width and height. I'm going to change both of these to 100%. So that way I can actually control the sizing with my wrapper and everything, not directly from the HTML. So we got our iframe in here. We can name this as our map. And I think we are good to go here. What I'm going to do now is go ahead and BEM all of this. Everything else that will be added in here is going to be put into a card that's going to have its own BEM classes. So it has a different hierarchy, so I don't want those in here yet. So I'm going to right click on the section, create BEM classes, and we have all of that in here. On my text here, let's go ahead and bring that over. If I click on my inner, I want to flex column this. I'm going to go to start and center, and I want my content gap to be a container gap, just so that text is the same space as what it is from up here. So I'm happy with that, and we have our intro done. I'm going to come up to our content wrapper, and let's see what we need to do next. Actually, I think I'm going to start working on my list here. So inside my list, and I need this to actually close for me. There we go. I'm going to change this to an unordered list and a list item. You can see that with our lists here, we're not actually seeing any, if I put like text in here just for example, you can see we're not seeing any of the bullet points. And if we want to do that, we're actually going to have to come back and add those in. All right, so in order to, or actually, sorry, I apologize. We don't want the bullets on those. We're going to want those later down here. So we got our list item set up inside of our list. I'm going to take that text out, and inside of here, I'm going to add in a flex div. And let's look at our actual cards here and make sense of what we're all going to need. So we need our actual card here. Inside of the card, we'll have a wrapper around these. We'll have a wrapper around the top part here, and then a wrapper around here and here, and then a wrapper around our icon. So let's, inside of our card, let me call this service area card. In this, I want to make an article. And from here, I am going to add in 2 flex divs. We're going to call these we'll call it a headline wrapper and our content wrapper. Headline wrapper and content wrapper. Inside of our headline wrapper, as I said, we're going to want a wrapper for each of these. This one I'll make into a flex div. This will just be a regular div. And I'm going to put the heading first. So we'll put that flex div in, and then we'll put our regular div inside of our div. We're going to put our SVG. Inside of the flex div, we'll put a heading and text. And this I'm going to call my heading wrapper. So we got headline versus heading wrapper, and this will be my lead. This will be my icon wrapper, and this will be my icon. All right, so we got that started here. Inside my actual content wrapper, let's look at what we need. So we're going to make a list here, and if I look at these of how I want to actually lay this out, is I'm going to add in another UL inside of my content wrapper. So let's put that in as a flex div, and inside of here I'm going to add in a regular div, and inside of there I want a link. So this is going to be a UL, this will be an LI, and then inside of here we want this to be our actual permalink. Just want to double check this, make sure I have everything that I need. The other thing I want to do is, let's see here, I think I will also actually end up wrapping this permalink. So I'm just going to right click and wrap in a div, and I'm going to change this to an article as well. And here we'll just call this our post wrapper. This will be our what do we want to call this? Our locations list and list items. All right, I think we have everything in here that we're going to need to BEM class. So I'm going to come up to my card, and I'm going to right click, create BEM class, and we have that all put together. Let's start adding some data in here. Again, I'm going to start just hard coding everything. So in my headline, which actually also needs to be an H3, is going to be my content is going to be Kansas. My lead is going to be this, and I'm just going to grab one of these And under my permalink, we'll put that here. I'm just going to leave my href as the pound sign for now. And then for my icon, I will go and grab this location pin and put that in. I'm going to strip the colors on that just so we can override that. And now let's start styling this out a bit. So if we go up to our card and take a look here, we have a background of ultra light. So on our service card, we can use our quick actions here and BG ultra light. We are going to need some padding. I think I will actually make this into a flex column as well. We'll go top and center. I want to add some padding. I don't need my fallback on this. We're also going to need border radius. So if you'll notice, I can't actually see border radius on my clipboard. If I hold shift and I use my cursor scroll wheel, I can scroll left and right. If I click radius, I get my default radius on there. I'm going to take that off. And then I need to add a border of 1 pixel solid. And I think we're going to go with the neutral, not neutral dark, just neutral. If I click into a heading, we can see our neutral color there. Let's double check what we used on this. Our stroke is border color light. I feel like I didn't have that defined, so let's actually double check that. Border color light. And yeah, I don't see anything on that, so I'm gonna change this back to neutral and maybe dark. See what makes sense on that. I feel like the dark is too dark, so let's adjust it again. I think maybe light will be the right one, and that looks perfect. All right, so we've got our card set up here. There's going to probably be some other stuff we end up doing inside of here, but that's a good start for now. Next, let's start working on our heading wrapper. This I'm going to flex column, which it already is by default. I want start and start. I want my gap to be a little bit smaller. If I come up and look at what our gap is on this, it's actually set to 0 just because our line height is a bit bigger inside Figma here. If I go 0 on this, that's a little bit too close. So maybe I go space XS and we divide that by 2 and see what that gets us. I like that. I think I will keep that. Next, I want to go to my icon wrapper. And if I look back at my Figma, we're at 65 on that and I think 35 there. So I'm going to go inline size of 2 rem of 65. And I'm going to, I got to put my pixels in there. I'm going to copy that, paste, and change inline to block. And then I'm going to copy that inline size once more. I'm going to come down to my actual icon here. And we're going to change that to 35. Back up to the wrapper, we're going to set this to flex, center, and center. And you can see now our icon is nice and centered there. The next thing I need to do is add a radius of radius circle. And you can see it turns that into a circle, and our background is going to be a primary ultra light for now. And I will end up coming back and removing this. But for now, I'm going to leave it. And because we're going to control that by our theme that we'll use on the main card. But we'll come back to that. Same thing with on the icon. If we want to change the color of this to primary, you can see that is working there. Based on what I've been seeing across the site, I'm also going to put fill in here just to be safe. All right, so that should be set up there. On the icon wrapper, I want to also set this to order of -1, so it goes in front. And then on our headline wrapper, I want to set this to flex row. And our gap is going to be space XS. Pulls that in a little bit. Let me double check to see what we had here. Space S. Okay, let me adjust that. All right, so that is set up here. All right, let's go down to our actual list item now. One thing I want to call out too is I'm not actually going to link to a page for Kansas right now. I am solely just putting this as a way to categorize the list down here. So even though I could go to a build out a taxonomy template for the states and show all of Kansas, I'm not going to do that in this situation, at least not right now. Maybe down the road I will come back and do that, but for right now, because that page itself is not going to have a ton of value compared to each of the cities. So my focus right now is just the cities. So if I come over to my unordered list in here, as I was trying to get at earlier, you can see our list style is not actually showing here. So one of the first things I want to do is put my list style back, and I'm going to change this to disk, and we want outside, and that's going to be our standard or default, and then none, because there's going to be no list style image here. So this is how it gets written out. I could probably leave just disk and we'd be okay, but I'm going to put all that in there just to be safe. And then on my list item, I need to go inline, or maybe it's margin inline start of, I believe normally it's 20 pixels, and I'm going to actually go to rem on that and wrap that back, and you can see our list item is back here. If we want to actually change the color on that, we can do that here and set that to primary. And again, that will be something I'll probably come back and edit at some point here. I need to actually spell primary right. There we go. Now you can see we're getting the same color there. I apologize for the typos. All right, so we've got our list item there. As far as our link styling goes, I'm going to come down here, and I like having the underline on there, even though we don't in here. I think it's a good thing to keep on showing that these are actually linked. As far as color goes, we're going to just return them back to our normal color here. So we can do this just overriding our link styling. So if I go link color and change that to text dark, you can see that comes back. And if I go link color hover and change that to text dark muted, when we hover these, we get that subtle change. And that way it's not our traditional link color, but it's the regular color that we wanted here. All right. I'm gonna hit save just to make sure we don't lose anything. I'm gonna go to my front end and take a look at everything that we have so far. So you can see we have our map, we have the start of our card with one item in here. Let's come back down. I can also come over to my figure and I am going to put a radius on this so it matches everything else, just our standard radius. And one thing typically I end up having to do is put overflow of clip on this just to make sure the map doesn't seep over. And I think that's it for the map right now. I don't need to put any exact styling on here. I probably can add a title in here just to be safe, and we'll leave that as Mr. Plumber Google Business Profile Map. I'm gonna hit save. All right, let's come back up to our unordered list here. And for these, I'm gonna just add in a handful more list items just so we have some examples. All right, so on this, I'm going to display this as a grid. And I want this to be a gap of space XS. That looks a little bit better. That's pretty close on those. I'm happy with that. And I want to put in a has-me and a container query. Inside our container query, if this is over, it's probably going to be like 450. I think we're going to want our grid template columns set to grid 2. All right, that's perfect. And that way, once that gets a little bit smaller, it breaks into single column. I think I'll actually bring this down a little bit yet, and we'll go to 400. We'll have to play around with that once we get all of them in there, just to see what that ends up looking like. Okay, so we've got those in there. I'm going to delete all the rest of these. We've got that set up. Hit save. All right, let's go ahead and start looping this. The first thing I'm going to have to do is come up to our other list that we had up here. And that's going to be outside of our card. So I'm going to close my card and map just so I'm not seeing those. On my list item here, I'm going to wrap this in a loop. And for this loop, we are going to use a text query. So I'm going to open my loops. I'm going to create a new one. On this new one, this is going to be a taxonomy. And we'll call this states query. And instead of category, we want to change this to our slug of state. And you can see when we get that, everything is showing up here. We have just the two of them, Missouri and Kansas. I'm going to hit save. Back out here. I'm going to hit my drop down here and grab my state query. So now you can see I am getting two cards that are showing. We could play with the order by, which is going by the name, and ascending or descending. I'm happy with that. What I'm going to do is change my key here. So we have state query as item, and I'm going to go as states with an S, making it plural because it's showing both states there. From here, we can start getting into our dynamic data. So I'm going to expand this out. On my heading, I'm going to change my content here to states dot title. And actually, I apologize if we look here, it's not title, it's actually name that we want. I always confuse that. So you can see we're getting Kansas and Missouri. We come down to our lead. I can do states dot metabox dot lead. You can see that fills in. If I come down to my icon in my source here, I can go states dot metabox dot icon dot URL, and you can see that pulls in there as well. All right, that should be perfect there. So you can see that is dynamically showing now. I'm going to hit save. Next thing we need to do is start building out the list inside of here now. So again, on my inner list or nested loop, I'm going to again right click, and we are going to wrap in a loop. This one is going to be a traditional post type. So I'm going to edit my loops. I'm going to add a new one. This new one, I am going to call probably my, let's go locations query. And for that one, we need to change our post to service areas. And when I enter that, you can see we're getting all of them. Now, right now, it's just going to show all of them. I do want to change my posts per page to -1 because I want them to show all of them. I'm going to leave everything else the same here. I may come back later and change the order by, but for right now, I'm just going to leave it. Then inside my tax query, I need to actually dictate what I want to query here. So we're going to add 2 new square brackets, and we're going to go single quotes and taxonomy equals the forward caret, and I want this to be my state, comma. I'm going to hit enter. Next, I want to go my field, and this is going to be my term ID. And here we're going to go with terms equals, and this one we're going to use an argument. So I'm going to call this state. I noticed I forgot to put my comma here and put my comma there. We can also put a fallback here if we need to. if I remember, if I go back to my, I'm going to hit save here quick. Go to my state query, and my term for the first one is 6, just so we can have a fallback here. So in order to do that, we put double question mark and 6. And save, and you can see things are showing up here. Okay. And if I double check all of these, we have all of them showing as the proper category, which should be Kansas only. So if I scroll and look for a few, I think they're all going to be Kansas, so we should be good on that. Hit save, and then I can close my loop. In here on my loop, I need to set this as my location query. And you can see these are outputting a bunch of them here. I'm also going to change my item from here to I'll just go location, and we need to pull in our data from our main loop. So I'm going to go $state colon, and this should be our state.id. Now, one thing I learned is, for some reason, when I was doing this previously, it's not actually pulling these in for me. If I hit save and I go to the front end, let's take a look. Okay, it's still not showing there either. Let's double check this. So I did state ID there. If we come up, oh, it states that I did on that one. Okay, let me spell that properly. Okay, and it is pre-filling for me now. So you can see we got that, and you can see that there's different, I have 10 of them here, and looks like only 7 of them there. So let's go ahead and put our dynamic data in here. This should be locations dot title or name. Location.title. Sorry, I keep trying to put the S on there or leave the S off when I need it. And then for our link, we need this to be locations.permalink.relative. And if I hover over one of these in my left, okay, it didn't show there, so maybe we have to hit save and go to the front end, double check this, and that's not correct, so let me double check that. Again, I put the S on by accident. Okay, and it's working there. We can verify again on the front end. Yep, so that's linking to the right things. You can see that we're seeing all of the Kansas cities here and all the Missouri cities here. All right, so let's go back in. What I'm going to do now is that I've got this built out. I'm going to come up to my service area card. I'm going to right click this, and we're going to create a component. And you'll notice when I do that, everything disappears in here, and that's because it doesn't know how to pull in that data. But if I go to the front end, it's still going to show. But let's go through here and figure out what we're all going to need. So the very first thing, again, if we go back to our states here, we have our custom fields of our theme, our lead, our icon. So I'm going to make a select field we'll call this our theme. I want primary, and I want secondary. And then we're going to need 2 text items and a media. This one will be our heading. This one will be our lead. And this one will be our icon. So now you'll see I have no data in here, but if I come down here, I can actually pull in these and put them in and change this to props.heading, and you can see that pulls in here. I'm going to copy this over to my lead, props.lead, and then on my icon, I'm going to copy this over, and we're going to go props.icon, and you can see my icon shows up. Now again, you'll see my list is not actually showing up yet, and that's okay. All right, so now let's work on our theming. So as I said, on our actual service card here is where we're going to have to play with the theming of these cards. So in order to do that, just like we did previously, we're going to add in our data attributes. And I didn't actually put this on yet, but I think we'll call this data-sa theme equals, and one of them is going to be primary. Put that I in, and I'm going to build one of these out, and then we'll copy and paste it. But before I get on my actual card here, I'm going to add in a selector. It's going to be data-sa theme equals quotations, and this will be props.theme. Enter that in. So now our theme is going to control these. I think what I want to do is we're going to create some variables. So I'm going to go starting from top down is going to be our icon wrapper, BG, our icon color, and our list color. So now if I go through and add those in, those are the only things that should be changing colors, is our wrapper here, the icon, and our bullet points. So we should only need those there. I'm going to set this very first one to be primary, and then I can just copy and paste this, even though this actually needs to be primary ultra light. Okay, I'm just going to put a little bit of space in between this. Okay, now from here we need to go swap all of those out. So on my icon wrapper, I'm going to change this to icon, what did I say, icon wrapper BG. Let's double check that. I probably should have just copied and pasted. Icon color is the next one. And I'm going to copy that. And then coming back up, we want our list color to be on our LI. And we change that there. And you can see I lose all my coloring here. So let's figure out why that is. I'm going to hit save. I'm going to go to the front end here. Okay, so we did lose it all there. Let's figure out why. Make sure I have everything spelled properly. And I do not. I'm really good at getting these typos in here as I go. All right, and that is working for us again. We can't see that list yet until I go to the front end, and you can see that is working properly. All right, so we got our theming set for the primary. I'm going to duplicate that. And from here, I can multi-select after the Y on all 4 of these, and I'm going to change it to secondary. I'm going to hit save, and we can exit. All right, so I think it's good practice to, even though we have these in here as the default, I'm going to still put them in there. So we need states.name. We need states.metabox.lead. And we need states.metabox.icon.url. Okay. I might have to double check that because it's looking like we're just getting our default on that. Okay. Nope, I didn't want that. Okay, it's working this time. Sometimes might just be a weird space in there or something. And then the next thing we're going to do is on my theme, because this is a multi-box, we can actually just type in whatever we want in here. So if I go states.metabox.theme, you can see now we're getting our theming showing up here. It does look like I need to double check my spacing on my icon here. So I'm going to hit save. And let's just go to the front end just to make sure everything is looking good there. You can see our theming is working properly here. I just want to double check my wrapper here. Move that over a little. So we're not getting a perfect square there, even though our block size and inline size are the same. Let's go back and double check that. I'm going to edit our component on my icon wrapper. Let's double check if we need to do flex shrink of 0, and it fixes our problem. It was our heading trying to squish that down on us, which we did not want. All right, hit save on that and exit. Okay, so our cards are built out. Now we need to figure out the layout of this. So we have our map and we have our 2 items. So in order to push this into the middle, we're going to have to come up to our content wrapper. And here we're going to create this as a grid. And we'll have to play around with the the sizing of everything. But to start out on this, I'm just going to make it into a grid template columns of grid 3. And you can see it forces this as a grid item and this as a grid item. And then we have a third one, which is empty, which is not exactly what we want. So one of the other things we need to do in order to be able to push the map into inside of the LIs down here is on our areas list, we need to go display contents. And now you can see it's putting it in line with this. So now if we come up back to our grid up here, this is where we can start to figure out how we want to build this out. So I'm going to go ahead and put a media wrapper in here and say probably anything that's over let's go with 900 is we're going to go with that grid 3. Take that off. So as soon as we drop below that, it should drop down to singles. Okay. And we may have to play with that again. I think I might also add in another media query, but let's finish this one first. So inside of here, I need to be able to target my list items. Now I can't just go to my list item and put in my CSS there because it's being looped, because I can only control one of them, and then there's going to be multiple here. So in order to do that, I need to grab my class here, come back up, and on this we're going to go our class name and first of type. And on this one, we're going to go grid column of 1 and grid row of 1. I'm going to copy this, hit paste. I'm going to change this to last of type. And I want this to be grid column 3 and grid row of 1. You can see it puts the map in there. I still do want to take my map and I'm going to add it in here as well. I'm going to do it in the middle just because it's going to be the middle item. And that one is going to be, I'm just going to copy this to make my life a little easier, grid column 2. The other thing I should probably do on my list items here is make them flex so that they are all equal height, and we can even go flex of 1. Hit save. Let's take a look on the front end, see what this looks like. Did I refresh too fast? All right, so we'll have to adjust this a little bit to make those lists break to 2 columns here. I just want to see what size we are on these. 450. Okay. All right, I'm going to close that. Back up here. Let's finish off our media queries here. So again, I'm going to copy this one. I'm going to paste it down here. And for this, we're going to have to add in some other items. So I'm going to go to rem of, I'll just pick a number for now, 700 pixels is going to be less than or equal to and this needs to be less than or equal, actually I'm going to take out that equal, less than 900, and we want to change our grid to 2. And then down here, we're going to let our columns go back to normal. So this will be 3 and this will be 2. So as I scroll down in size, under 900, it'll squish. That should have gone to 2. Now it goes down to 1. Let's double check this. So our width is still within that same size. Why is it not breaking to 1? To rem, 700 pixels. Grid 2, 1, 1. Oh, I also need to change my map to row of 2. Grid column 1. And that should be grid column 1. There we go. Now everything's fitting. So we have, this should be in square 1, 1. This should be in square 2, 1. And this should be in square 2, 1. All right. Now we've got that set up properly. And as we scroll down and get smaller, they stack there as well. And the map goes to the bottom. Okay, I'm happy with that. Let's go back into our card, edit our component, and fix our grid down here. So it's saying anything over 400 on our container query should be grid 2. Maybe we'll go 450 on that and try it. Inspect. Move this over a little. Oh, so we actually need to bring that down in size. Okay, let's go 350. Double check it. And there we go. That looks much better. We still have plenty of space there. I could probably even go down to 300 because none of these are super long right now. This is one of those games you have to play a little bit, is just bouncing back and forth, figuring out sizing of some of it as you make your screen size smaller and make it more responsive. I'm going to hit save again and refresh. Everything is the same size here. We have our outline. If we compare it here, in this one, it looks like our map is a little bit bigger, but I think it's design-wise just fine showing it as 3 equal parts because these are the main important pieces. The map isn't quite as important, but you can see this matches everything that we're seeing here. Obviously my icons are a little different. I just put placeholders in Figma, and you can see this is working. You can see we got the border radius on that. We could maybe even come into our map and I need to get out of my component there. We could maybe do a border of 1 pixel, solid, and neutral light. Let's take a look and see what that looks like. So we get that same kind of outline like we do on these, and I think that is a good look on that, and I'm pretty happy with that. All right, let's look at what we got coming up next, and the next video is going to be this frequently asked questions. We're going to have an accordion in here, and for this, I'm going to go up to our docs here, and I'm trying to remember if we have an accordion in here. It's probably under accordion. Yep. So we should be able to copy that, and we're just going to use this. So again, this is given to us directly by Etch, so we just need to copy and paste that in. What I will probably do is build out some questions in a custom post type, and I'll do that before our video here. So we can just loop that. We'll make this into a component as well. And we are almost done. We got a couple more sections here, and we are all done. We're making really good progress here, and I appreciate you guys watching these videos. Hopefully you're learning a lot. Please drop a like, drop a comment, subscribe if you haven't. Let me know what you think of the videos, what else you would like to see done as far as these go. Let me know any other feedback you have on these. Again, appreciate you guys watching this. Stick around for the rest of them, and we'll see you in the next video.